Yeah,
And where you live, you have mountain lions.
yep. Yeah, I've had a mountain lion, I don't know, 30 yards from me a couple of times.
Hi, thank you for joining me today on Campfire Chats with Honorable Outfitters. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Richard Harleman coming from way out west. Now, Richard, just like myself, is a fellow YouTube creator, and he is a reenactor, a living historian. He's a camp crafter, bushcrafter, and he lives off grid. And he's come all the way from out west to join us and teach us and discuss how he's grown in all of his amazing skills that he's acquired over the years. And that's what this whole channel is about, is listening to others, engaging in awesome conversation with fellow campers, and seeing how we can grow as campers as well. So Richard, I really appreciate you stopping by. Now, before we dive into his background, I always want to make sure to say thank you to our patrons on Patreon, because without their support, this channel just wouldn't exist. And, we got to have someone to help pay the bills, and our Patreons certainly do that. Now, Richard lives on the wild side of life with horses, dogs, goats, and chickens, while also doing his own style of historical bushcraft, focusing on the 1860s. And it's interesting, he didn't list his lovely turkey. Now, if you watch his channel, especially recently, he's got a turkey friend that follows him around like a loyal puppy dog. So when you check out his channel, you'll definitely notice his big old turkey. All right, let's bring Richard on. Oh, Richard, you're in the jail. What happened?
Yeah, well, they let me out on occasion, especially for special occasions like this.
Oh, that's so cool. Where are you at?
I'm in a ghost town called Shaniko, and this is the old jailhouse. So there's 3 cells there. If the lighting will work, in my head, get out of the way. But yeah, this is the old jailhouse. It's one of my favorite buildings because back when we were kids, well, we were teenagers, and we'd come down here to do gunfights, and this is where we would sleep at night. So good memories here.
Wow, what a cool opportunity, man. Now, have you been, in your historical dress even for that long, ever since you were a teenager? Is this a new thing that you do every day?
Well, I wish I could say that when I was a teenager, I had the right historical clothing, but it wasn't until um, I think 4 or 5 years ago that I figured out how inaccurate my clothing was when I discovered the Who Wore What page on Facebook. And that's when I started figuring out that I had a lot to learn. And then I got my correct outfit from learning on there.
Now, since you brought up you had to learn, when I found your channel a couple years ago, you were you were doing everything just like the old cowboys did, and you were very open about it, like your failures, your successes, and you would talk to us about those awesome opportunities. At one point, I remember you even decided to just jump in the creek with all your clothes on and everything in early spring, which I thought was nuts. But you did it,
Yeah,
and
there's still
you
some.
just wanted to experience it.
Yeah, that's kind of that getting in the creek. That's a good summary of how I do things. I just jump in and kind of see what happens. Yeah, there was snow around in
What
that one.
started it?
What's that?
What started all that?
All of this? Um, yeah, it's a funny thing. When I was like 13 or 14, somehow I had what I call my personal renaissance, where for some reason I just started taking a liking to the old ways. I read, I think I kicked it off with reading Mark Twain, Tom Sawyer, his Tom Sawyer book. And then after that, I read the Laura Ingalls Wilder series, which a lot of people might think is a girl's book, but her pa is like the ultimate man. And so
Right.
there's a lot to be derived for men. And as a boy, I read that stuff, and at that time, my mind, it's kind of a weird thing now looking back, but everything I looked at, I thought in terms of, well, did they have it back then? Because that's the only thing that I want in my life. Unfortunately, I kept putting off the lifestyle until recently. Well, 6 years ago now, I guess, when I finally realized, I'm just getting older. I got to do this if I'm gonna. And so I just jumped in.
Man, that's amazing. I think the first comment I left on your video was, man, like, man, you are living the dream. Now, did you already have the skills for the most part to jump into it with living history experience or camping experience or anything like that, or professional experience?
Not a lot. What I did have was when I was 16 years old, I got involved with the Mountain Man Rendezvous group in my town, and I got fortunately I got under the wing of this old guy who has since passed away. But his name is Vic Joso, Frenchman, and he he took me to the rendezvous with him. He got me deals on stuff like my Baker tent, which isn't the correct tent, but at the time I didn't know that, and it was white canvas. So I had all my own gear, and I'd camp near his wall tent because I wanted my own camp. So I guess that would be it. That was when I learned how to use flint and steel, which once you've got a fire and a bed figured out, and how to cook over fire, which I did back then too. I used a Dutch oven. So once you got those basics down, then you've really got enough to just start doing stuff. That's how I see it.
So why'd you start out with the Rendezvous? Why not Civil War? Why not World War One or two? Or I don't know. Why Rendezvous?
The mountain man era more appealed to me. I'm not a military type. I don't like the structure. I don't understand beyond preserving history, because I like all history. I do not understand why guys do the
Right.
military stuff uh, when you could just go out by yourself like I do and do. But some people are different. I don't like the mountain man stuff that appealed to me because that's more animal like or more wild. And when I found out, I bought a little black powder pistol at a gun show, and the guy told me about rendezvous. So I went to a turkey shoot, and from there, that's where I met Vic, and we got started doing the mountain man stuff.
Man, that's cool. Now your channel is all about living off grid, and it's a neat blend of the historic with the contemporary. And in today's society, I think there's a lot of people who are really wanting and desiring, or at least drawn to that kind of lifestyle. Maybe not the history aspect. I don't know. I'm a little partial to that, but the living off grid aspect. Like you recently, you're figuring out how to preserve meat out in the wild, like out in the open. So, how, if you were to give somebody some advice and where to start out in that direction, what would you tell them?
In the direction of meat.
Of living off grid.
Oh, of living off grid. Um, well, the way that I look at it is first simplify your life. That's the main thing. That's why, because a lot of these off grid uh, channels that are on YouTube, the way that I look at it is it's like they're trying to take city life and make it rural. Uh, where,
Right.
I mean, what's the advantage of that? I mean, especially like, well, we got to have our AC and our freezers and all that, blah, blah, blah. Then just stay in town. It's way easier. And it's probably cheaper to just be connected to power, in my opinion. I mean, I know I do get the draw of wanting to be rural, but to me, simplifying your life, because to me, it's all about freedom. And you don't realize how bound you are until you start letting go of things. I'm a very sentimental person. I love
Mhm.
keeping keepsakes because it brings back memories and I just go down those memories. However, I've had to let things go, and that's been a process of learning to let things go because instead of living in those memories, which is fun, start looking forward, and you can't do that when you're bound. And so, simplifying my life has been huge by, for one, getting rid of stuff, and for two, learning that you don't have to have a different meal every day. For thousands of years, people ate the same things day in and day out. Uh, I eat the exact same foods, roughly the exact same foods every day. I bought myself some soy sauce and barbecue sauce as a luxury item because I love making a sauce out of it with olive oil and then black pepper. But I don't need it for a long time. For months, I went without it because I was minimizing my food so that I could minimize anything that I had to buy. And so if you start, even if you're living in town, if you start recognizing your patterns and cutting out what's not essential, then you start
Mhm.
streamlining and it's easier. Another great example is I haven't used shampoo in my hair for, I think I did once on accident because muscle memory. I was taking a shower, but basically the last
Right,
year or
right.
two, I don't. And you'd be amazed. My hair doesn't stink. Trust me. My mom would tell me. I hug my mom when I see her, and my mom's honest. And she would tell me because that's a lot of people tell me, yeah, it probably stinks, and you just don't notice. No, people would be telling me. I have trusted sources, and other people have started doing it too since I gave the example, and other people have done it, and they found that the solution that the results are great. And so it's things like that that you discover that you don't need to hang on to, and you can actually let go, and then it makes it simpler when you're living off grid.
What's your background and education? Because you said you got involved in history at a very young age at 16. Did you go on to college? Are you a self-taught? What's your story in that area?
Oh man, well, uh, so I was an exemplary student up until second grade, and and then in the ninth grade I dropped out of school because I'm going to brag a little bit. This occurred to me. In the ninth grade, my English teacher for literary class used my setting description that she gave the class as a challenge. She used mine as an example.
Well
In
done.
welding class, the first time I ever used a arc welder, the teacher used my puddling as a technique for how it's supposed to be done. And in my science class, it was an advanced science class where the teacher told us work on this problem, and I thought it was a weird joke because the answer was obvious, and so he used that as an example of guys. Yeah, he's got the answer. That was my schooling experience in the ninth grade, and I know I'm bragging a little bit, but school wasn't for me because it my learning style just didn't fit with the rest of the people. And that's not to say that I'm smarter than other people. I pick up on things that people don't pick up on. Other people pick up on things that I totally just miss, and I look like an airhead. Just that the schooling system was not fit for me, so I quit in the ninth grade. My mom attempted to homeschool me. Mostly, I wanted to just go and be a man, and so
Mhm.
I worked with my dad. My dad had a sawmill operation where we made survey stakes and tree spreaders, and so I worked with my dad and got to interact with men and learn how things happen. And then my mom got mad and made me go to college, and so
Oh, I'm sorry. That the hands-on experience must have really helped you though with what you're doing now, right? It set you up for success.
yeah, I think so. I think so. I learned a lot. I hung out with men. I didn't like hanging out with people my age because I couldn't learn from them. And yeah, so Oh, but I did go back later and I got my 2-year degree, and I did love school when I went back then when I was a little older. It was a lot of fun.
And what was your degree in?
Oh, just a transfer degree, just a 2-year community college degree.
Okay, nice. I'm gonna let you in on a secret here, Richard. So, I'm a teacher, as you know, and a lot of my viewers know. I'm a teacher, and when I graduated high school, my class size was 78, and I'm pretty sure I graduated at 76. So, there's hope for all of us.
Yeah.
But I
Nice.
really do think that, real life hands-on experience goes far above and beyond book knowledge. I really do, and I think you're a testament to that. I think anybody who watches your channel can clearly see the ability, the education, the knowledge that you have, and you don't stop. You're not satisfied with basic knowledge. You're constantly trying to learn more and new things.
Yeah, I appreciate that because I sit around thinking I'm an idiot all the time. So this- everything I'm doing, I'm learning, and it, so I appreciate that.
Now, you're a off-grid homestead. You have horses, and in fact, I love watching your horse videos. I used to have a horse myself, so I long for that again.
Hmm.
But you have horses, and you have goats, you have chickens, you recently have a turkey who's your best friend. Where did you start with horses, or if someone who's wanting to get on the off-grid lifestyle, how should they, you think, start out with animal management?
Well, I can tell you what I figured out in my view, but then, granted, I'd like to clarify that my philosophy, I call it. Let's see if I can point at it. Over on the wild side, intentionally,
Yeah.
because my thing is, I once had this cocker spaniel, and I told her we lived out on the river on 35 acres and just tons of trees and everything. I told my dog, I said, anywhere you go, I'm going to follow you, and I'm going to do it barefoot because I was barefoot at the time. And so my dog took off as if she knew what I said. Like as soon as I was done talking, she just took off running. And I followed her. I followed her all through the thorny bushes and across the creek and everywhere she went. And that's the style. I look at my dogs and I'm like, how can I simplify my life and be like a wild animal? Um, so that's important. The reason I'm saying that this is because I have a very different goal and a different philosophy than most people. Like I said already, that a lot of people just want to replicate a city life out in a rural setting,
Right,
and
right.
not all of them. And some people do get more rural in that they raise their own animals and they garden, and I respect that. But it's a different philosophy from mine because. Uh, For instance, I decided I didn't want to garden because I've learned some
Mhm.
wild edibles that grow. And if I did grow anything, one of the important ones for me is leafy greens. But back home on my property, I looked around, I had 30 acres of leafy greens already growing. And so I saw no
Nice.
reason, yeah, I saw no reason to garden. And so I just wanted to clarify that that's my philosophy. So as I share, mine is a more simplified than most people. So for instance, chickens are great because you get eggs and protein, but on the
Uh-huh.
other hand, they're dang expensive. It's cheaper to go pay whatever. I mean, I can get eggs for a dozen for 350 or $4, and so it's almost cheaper and easier to just buy eggs from somebody else than it is to buy corn and chicken feed, because now unless if you want to raise worms. And there's a lot of insects that you can raise for chickens, and then you don't have to buy the feed. But that's the problem with chickens is they're uh, a lot of months they're the most expensive animals I've had. And but I'm such a
Hmm.
sucker. I love chickens, so I kept them around. And while my horses are out eating grass on property that's going up in equity, and so the horses helped me increase my personal wealth, while my chickens are just an expense and might give me eggs for 2 years. This year, I'm finally starting to get one egg reliably. So
Oh my.
yeah. So I have a lot of different views than most people. I wouldn't recommend getting horses. Do not get horses unless you want to do the old west thing. Even if you want to pack, get a camel. If I could start it all over again, I would get either a camel, or maybe I would do 2 alpacas, or I would just do 3 or 4 goats for pack animals. There's a guy named Aaron. He lives nomadically. He travels with his little wagon, and he's got 4 sheep that he pulls his wagon with, and he gets milk from those sheep, and he gets wool, and he makes stuff out of the wool. So that's way smarter than having
Wow.
horses. The horses are just a childhood dream and the history aspect for me.
And how long have you had horses? Did you start as a kid with horses?
No, I wish I wanted to. When I had my personal renaissance, I wanted to buy a horse, and I still remember this guy telling me, "Yeah, you're 16. When I was your age, I just wanted a car, not a horse." And but all I could think about was getting a horse. But I didn't have any support. I didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't have the confidence that I have now just to jump into things. Um, so I didn't get a horse then, and then I lived my life, and then in 2015 is when I bought my first 2 horses, and and then I had 8 that were running wild. I've done things with horses that other people think you can't do. Um, for instance, out at one of my properties, I figured out that I could let them run wild, and so
Mhm.
they pretty much stayed in a 300-acre area, even though the gates were down and the fences were down, and they could have run to Mount Rainier if they wanted to, but I found that they chose to stick around, and that 300-acre playground is basically what they stayed in.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
When I was, I think I was in college. Yeah, I was definitely in college. So I was probably, 19, maybe 20, and I my mom, she's always loved horses, so she wanted a horse. She was getting into the age. She's like, "Hey, I wanna have a horse one last time." So she takes me to one of the, Bureau of Land Management auctions where they had the Mustangs, and she got a horse, and I'm looking at this other horse, and it was just gorgeous, just I felt like he was calling my name. So I adopted a Mustang from Nevada, and he was like a big puppy dog. But I tell you what, man, if you're a horse person listening to this, you'll relate to this. I'd pick up his feet, and every time I pick up his back feet, especially the first time, he would boom on the stall right behind him, just to let me know that he could kill me anytime he wanted to. And then I'd smack him on the bottom, and I'd lift up his feet, and he was okay. But we
Huh.
had an interesting relationship. I had to get rid of him. Like you said, I was young, I was in college, and horses are not cheap. So, yeah, so that's my horse story. I had him for a couple years, green broke him, rode him around a little bit, and he was an experience. I loved him. I hope he's doing well.
That's pretty
So,
impressive.
thank you. So let's shift it a little bit. Let's talk about camping because a lot of your videos, especially when spring hits and it's warm weather and stuff, you start putting a lot more camping videos, whether it be packing a horse and going out in the mountains and stuff. Now, the camping you do is very traditional, very traditional. Um, how's it like not taking sleeping bags and just relying on a couple 5-pound wool blankets when it's 30 degrees or colder?
Well, it hasn't been too bad. A big part of that has been conditioning myself to accept the cold. Um, so really, when I go on an actual camping trip, I'm not that uncomfortable. It was more when I did my brief series of tarp tents that was on my property in it was somewhere between 5 and 10 degrees at night Fahrenheit. That's when I got cold, but I was pushing the limits on that intentionally.
That's too cold.
Oh, and I don't have two blankets. Okay, so I got to clarify though. I like to be super upfront about everything. Uh, Real traditional practice that I read about is guys taking one or two wool blankets and sleeping right on the ground. Um, what I have is a canvas tarp, and I always have at least 3 or 4 blankets. So I got to say that I got to clarify that because I'm really true to the history, and I am aware when I break from it. So that's my practice because I put 2 blankets under each saddle, my riding horse and pack horse, and then I've got 2 tarps for packing my gear in, and then I use them for my bedding. So I love it though. I love the simplicity. I love the dual purpose that I can put the 2 blankets under the saddle, and then I'm not carrying extra gear. Because, like I said, if I could, I'd rather be like an animal. I envy my dogs who can just go and they like to dig a little hole and sleep in it, and I have to carry stuff. So,
Are you planning any upcoming spring campouts that same way?
yeah, definitely. I'm working on it. As a lot of people know, I'm in Oregon, which is a new area as far as going out and camping. And I haven't abandoned home. I still have tons of places I want to go and
Yeah.
ride there. But while I'm here, I'm looking for places that I can go. And I think I have 2 good routes now, both of them going to rivers, one being the John Day River, the other one being the Deschutes. And I got to go explore
Nice.
them. Yeah, one of these days I want to get down there and check them out and see what kind of route I have. And then I have a new challenge in that I'm training Barley Mash to be my riding horse and my mare to be my pack horse until my mare is rideable and she'll be my riding horse. And so that's a new challenge for me. So my trips might start with me walking most of the time, but I hope to get out camping very soon.
Now, when you go on your horse treks, do you end up taking like a couple bags of feed for the horse, or do they just forage on the grasses and the fodder that they can find?
Yeah, they just forage. Uh, there's actually a ton of grass
Nice.
available. Yeah.
When you go camping out, you usually take your dog from what I notice, but have you always gone camping with one of your animals, or do you go camping at all with just by yourself?
Let's see. I always go with my animals, and there's a reason for that. I'm trying to think if I went without a dog once. Seems like I did a hunting trip where I didn't have a dog, but I don't think so. I think I've always had my dog uh, because they're my defense. Like my dogs, they are very territorial, and so they keep the animals away at night. And honestly, I think the people who camp without dogs are impressive because I'm so used to them. I wake up, they wake me up at night, and I was bringing my spotlight with me. It's like a gun, it's got a trigger. So the dogs wake me up, I grab my gun and my spotlight, and I'm ready to go. And then I quit bringing my spotlight because obviously they didn't have those back in the 1800s. And I really rely on my dogs.
I'm kind of jealous because I went solo camping once, and it was probably the most uncomfortable camp out I've ever been. I'm kind of like you. I'm kind of impressed with those who do the solo camps, but I think it was in the fall, I did my solo camp, and there were coyotes all around, and they're yipping and howling and stuff. And I did bring my 38 just in case. But really, that didn't give me too much peace of mind, to be honest. Like, I was very uncomfortable.
Yeah,
And where you live, you have mountain lions.
yep. Yeah, I've had a mountain lion, I don't know, 30 yards from me a couple of times. Oh, a few times if you count at my other property, but at the one property, uh, had mountain lions. I did see one night when I was hunting and I had my dogs and I had my spotlight at that time. There was a cat walking on a log. I don't know if it was a bobcat or a cougar, but it was a wildcat. And yeah, camping alone is just not my thing. Having the dogs is great.
If you like this video so far, we'd appreciate if you click like. That way other people find it. You'll be doing them a favor. We really appreciate it. What's your favorite type of camping? Do you like backpacking? Do you like using your horse? And as far as tent or shelter, what's your favorite shelter?
Yeah, my favorite camping is when I went with one horse, honestly. And that's because my horses are not trained really well. If I had two horses that were like Bo was my main riding horse, and I've got a video of doing a solo trip with him. And that was my favorite because I know how I can tie him, and he's strong enough, and I go with enough light enough gear that I didn't weigh him down. So it was the simplest. When I've taken two horses, then it's just more work trying to find them
Mhm.
food and keeping one of them tied that doesn't tie well yet because he's young. Um, but that would be my favorite. Uh, oh, and then my favorite shelter is the cowboy camp, as it's called, where just as simple as can be. I've got my whole camp now set up where I put my firewood, where I put my food set up, and I put my teapot, my pot, my bed. My bed is just laying down the tarp, and then if I'm using any foliage to stay warm, put put that under the tarp, and then lay down the tarp and lay down the blankets. But most of the time, I can get away with just blankets because I got four of them, and so just as simple as can be.
You've mentioned in your videos before the kind of wood that you have in your area is usually not a hardwood. It burns up hot and fast. Do you use backpacking stoves or some other type of artificial cooking methods besides fire, traditional
Yeah,
fire?
yeah, I got really good last year at cooking over wood because all year last year, even through the heat of the summer, I never did start using propane. I just cooked over wood. So I got pretty used to being able to know, okay, I'm going to need about that many sticks, and I got my cooking done. And I figured out that if you sit 6 feet or more away, just treat it like COVID, then then the heat doesn't bother you because it's. It's hot enough. You get away where the heat doesn't affect you. So you just go over, fill it with a little more wood, and when you have to, and that's tolerable. But
Nice.
yeah, that was at home. When I go camping, if there's burn bans, because I live in a dry area, then my method has been an alcohol stove because there's no O-rings involved. It's just a little can, and then you just bring alcohol that I used to be able to get at the dollar store, and it's super simple and it's pretty lightweight. So that's my go-to when I can't do fires.
Now, knowing you, is this a homemade alcohol stove or is this a manufactured that you purchased?
Absolutely homemade. It's the cheapest one I could find, and then I figured out you can go even cheaper. Honestly, you can just get. Um, so the one that I use is called the Fancy Feast. If you want to look up videos on it, but they told me to. I had to get this special cloth. I think it was welding cloth that you line it with, and it's a good design. It takes Fancy Feast and a tomato paste can and this cloth. The cloth kind of works as a wick, but uh, I've also I've tried to see how simple I can go, and I took
Uh-huh.
like just a tuna can, just throw some dirt in it, add alcohol, and light it, and that works as long as you're not, putting your stove right on top of it. If you got room. So just a tuna can with dirt and alcohol, and I might try doing that again this year. And it would make it a little bit wider than the tomato paste can. But yeah,
I
super
would have
simple.
never considered using dirt to wick it.
Yeah, it worked great when I did it. It's been a few years, so I need to do it again, make sure it's up to par.
Yeah, you need to show that in one of your YouTube videos, man. Like, that's cool, that'll change the world.
Yeah, I should. I'll get a tuna can and and practice and demonstrate it.
When you were younger, you said you hung out with men, um, you worked in the lumber mill industry, things like that. So you were pretty self-reliant. You grew up with a self-reliant mindset already. Did your dad teach you how to camp, or did you go camping with your family? Where does that
Yeah,
start?
my dad didn't. I mean, when we were kids, we went camping, but that was totally dependent on my dad. He'd just set up a tent and mom would lay out bedding. We were just kids. And we just did campground camps, and that was a ton of fun. But no, mostly it was just trial and error. Like one error, the first time I ever camped alone, I went up to a lake with my German Shepherd, and I set up my rendezvous tent, um, and I got. Oh, let's see. No, actually, I was comfortable that night because I cut a bunch of fir boughs and made a bed, and I was pretty comfortable. It was when my dad and I went to that same spot, and I didn't check the weather or anything. Where now
Mhm.
I watch the weather really close, and I yeah. Anyway, it got cold. It got dang cold that night, and like it was just miserable. And so I figured out. So that was one of the errors. And then so when I went and made the furbo bed, I was warmer. But I never really like watched how cold it got. That's what I do now. Um, Big time is like, okay, it's going to be in the 20s tonight. How much gear do I need to be warm when it's in the 20s at night? And okay, tonight it's going to be in the teens. So what do I need to do different? Uh, and how much has my body adjusted? Last winter, I stayed in my teepee for a long time. I was quite proud of myself. Um, it was getting down into the teens, and I was still sleeping in my teepee with no fire through the night. So I'd get up, just get out of bed, and
Oh,
start
wow.
a fire. And so you watch the temperature and figure out what you need. So now, if it's gonna, as long as I got a rough idea of how cold it'll get at night, I know what I need to take with me.
Wow, that's a lot of experience then to get to that point for sure. I'm not at that experience level. No, 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 no. And I thought I do a lot of camping, but I think your lifestyle really has given you the edge on that one.
Yeah,
So,
I used to sit. I used to sit in my cabin by the fire, and it'd be blowing or snowing outside, and I'm thinking, I need to be out in that. I need to be camping in that. It took me a few years before I actually got to getting out in.
intimidating, that's for sure. I mean, hypothermia and other cold sicknesses, that's no fun.
Yeah, I went slow. Like, first I started living in my cabin, but I always had a good warm stove, so I'd sit there with the door open. But I'd go outside and I'd get used to the weather, and then I started. I don't remember when I did my first outdoors. I guess I stayed in my teepee when I had it set up down here as an Airbnb, and just I kind of started doing it gradually, and then I saw a cold night would be coming up, and so I'm going to give that a try, and then the more I did it, the better I got adapted and figured it out.
Now there's a thing that you keep bringing up is getting acclimated or getting conditioned to it. So I think that's probably some pretty solid advice to those of us who want to do more um, long term cold weather camping or maybe just even if you're starting out, you don't want to jump into it. You want to acclimate yourself. Is that what you would suggest too?
I do. I think that for me, and I kind of think it's common for a lot of people. It's fun to watch all the bushcraft videos and camping videos, but then it's like we put our own weight on our shoulders of, oh, that's how I have to do it if I do it, or else I'm a phony. And once I got rid of that stupid mindset, all of a sudden doors opened up. And I try to convey that people for whatever my opinion is worth. I really want people to just have that freedom. So, go camping, set up your camp and have your car or truck, whatever, right next to you and give it a try. And if you find you're too cold, that's a learning experience and that's a growth. And get in your car and get warm. There's no shame in that because then you go home, you process, and you think, okay, what did I do wrong? What do I want to do different? And then you take your car and camp next to it again, and hopefully that night you stay out all night. And if not, no shame. You just get in your car and I think that if people felt that freedom, they'd be able to get out more. Another thing I like to tell people is don't even go camping. Just get out and bring whatever stove system and coffee making system you're going to use and just go out and do that. And you're going to have a great day. You're going to have an awesome time of learning. Even if you fail, you've figured it out and your brain will go home and process. And that's very counterintuitive to what we learn in society. And this is where you start training your brain to be independent and self-sufficient, is going and processing and then making corrections. And that's all. You'll be doing that for the rest of your life, but that's where the freedom comes.
Yeah, I think that's really well put. I did a survey on my YouTube channel a while ago about what is it that kept people out from camping, and of all things, it was time. And I'm thinking, like, man, that's kind of a hard thing to try to solve for people. But I think your suggestion of, like you said, even if it's just out beside your car, everybody's pretty much got a backyard. They might not be able to go to a state park, or they may not have property or something like that. But just getting outdoors, maybe even your back porch. Maybe you don't even have a tent. You just go on your
Mhm.
back porch and lay out there and see how far you can make it. That is fantastic advice, I think. I appreciate that one. That's good. That's a gold nugget, I think.
Yeah, just a piece of plastic in the backyard. That's a great idea. Uh, and when I was saying you, I didn't mean like you. I mean whoever's watching. But yeah,
No
right in your
offense taken.
backyard. There's there's a lot of there's a lot of people that are aware of the bushcraft videos where the people are camping in their backyard. But remember, the difference there is because those people are pretending like they're out in the wilderness. That's where the shame comes from. If you're in your backyard and you're admitting it, and then there's no shame in that because you're just being upfront. It's those guys that put off as if they're doing something that they're not. That's the one that people have an issue with.
Yeah, I can agree with that, man. Like, there's got to be some honesty in all of it. And I wonder if some of those bushcrafters, they they set up their camp and they have the camera on where they go to sleep, and then after they get done filming that, they go back home and they come back early in the morning, get wrapped up in their sleeping bag or something like that, and they're like, "Oh, what a beautiful day."
Yeah, it really makes you wonder.
So so what was your
Yeah.
favorite all-time camp out experience, your favorite adventure that you would like to share?
I'll say a weird one. Uh, so my favorite, I don't know if this would be my favorite, but it's the first one that comes to mind. When I was camping, I think we were about 150 yards away from my cabin. It's the series I already referred to when I was camping out in 5 or 10 degree temperatures. And
Right.
I was camped right out in the wind. There's something, anybody who's camped knows this. There's something about suffering that is rewarding. And that was the hardest times I've had. and yet it's my favorite memories. And one time, so my rules for myself there was it was a successful overnighter if I slept if I stayed in my camp until I think it was 4:30 a.m. because that's when I was waking up anyway. Every day I would wake up at 4:30, so it's not like I was waking up extra early so I could leave. But for those were experiment practices for me. So as long as I stayed till 4:30, I considered myself okay. I've achieved what I was hoping to do. And then one time I actually had to. I couldn't. Okay, so when you wear Old West clothes, you wear a long shirt, you wear suspenders, and then you got a vest with about 10 buttons on it. And so on my trek back to my cabin where I had no fire, I made sure my fire was out so it wasn't warm in my cabin. Anyway, I didn't even make it to my cabin because I couldn't go any further. I had to stop and go number two. And so I had to do all my buttons really fast because it was coming on quick. I had to undo all these buttons. I had to pull my vest off, pull my suspenders off, get my 5 buttons on my trousers undone, and barely did it in the nick of time. But it was about 10 degrees or 8 degrees Fahrenheit, and the wind was blowing, and I was just there totally exposed, doing my thing. And that's one of my favorite memories. And then I went on home to my cabin, started a fire with flint and steel and my wood stove, and it was just so rewarding. And then here's the clincher. Here's the final part of that story. So then I was gonna go camping, and I was in the front of my wood stove, and I thought about going camping again outside like that. And inside of like my heart or whatever you want to call it, I had this like leap of joy, like, oh, cool, because I can suffer and then come back to my wood stove and have coffee. And you can't enjoy your wood stove and coffee unless the way that I did, unless you struggle through the night. And I don't know, it's just a weird experience.
Yeah, I think that's some life philosophy right there at the end, man, where you said you can't enjoy it unless you go through some suffering. I think that's pretty deep, brother. I really do. There's, you dropped some truth right there, I think.
Cool.
When you mention that it was a weird experience and it's weird in part because you suffered and because the suffering is stuck with you and it's more enjoyable. I'm a scout leader, and when
Mm.
I took my scouts to camp out in March, it was it was the one camp out where they're supposed to light their own fires with 3 matches, and it's been raining all week. When we get there, the ground is just soggy. You're walking, and it sounds like you're walking on sponges, you know, and the scouts are just miserable when they're supposed to make this fire. Now they're having fun when they're splashing around in the puddles and stuff, but man, when it came to actually making that fire, they were just miserable. Like, man, can we just go home? Can we just go home? I was like, no, because you may hate this right now, but your shared misery will
Mhm.
certainly be one of your favorite memories. If nothing else, you'll be cursing out your old scoutmaster about how he made you do this, and that shared enemy will help you out.
So how'd it go? Did they get a fire started?
Oh no, man. No, no, no. And it was, so they missed their breakfast. It was coming up on lunchtime and they're about ready to miss their lunch. These kids are like starving. They're about to turn on me and steal my car keys or something. So we ended up giving in and gave them some fat wood and helped them light some fires and stuff so they could get their lunch. But you know, it was a learning experience because now this next time, like, man, next time we're going to bring our own tender. You know, we're going to bring all this dry stuff. We're going to come prepared. It's like, there you go. That's a lesson. That's
Yeah.
a lesson.
And they're not discouraged. They want to do it again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They
Good.
want to do it again, and hopefully it is better weather because I mean it's a hard task for a kid to build those skills and finding the right size sticks and making feather sticks if nothing else, and it's just for a kid it's all pretty hard. So I was pretty proud of them for what they did do and as long as they did it. I don't think I could have pushed them any harder. You know, like that's a success, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That's rough time right then.
Now, before we close up, you have a fantastic YouTube channel. You really do. I love watching all the stuff you do, all the experimentations that you do for our sake, so we don't die. You know, you take all that on your own shoulders. You're very upfront. You're very honest. We were talking about the bushcrafters who may be a little fake and everything, but even when you're doing the series with your tarp tents, you came back and you admitted your mistakes. You admitted like when you called it early, things like that. Like, if someone that's listening to this and watching this, like they want honesty, they want to see an experiences that is way above, in my opinion, the level of like Alone or something,
Mm,
because you're teaching them. You are teaching them.
mm.
If there was one skill, one important skill that you have that you think people should learn, what would it be?
For camping,
Sure. Let's go with camping. You can go camping. You can do your off grid living, your lifestyle, man. Like because you live it. Yeah, you're starting a fire every day to make your coffee. Unlike us who just turn on the stove and we got it. It's boom, magic.
yeah, okay. Except right now, I'm using propane. I'm living in my cabin with propane. Uh, just wanted to clarify
Ooh,
there.
high end living.
Yeah, yeah, it is really convenient. Okay, I would say the most important thing that I find that, and it encompasses all of it, would be simplicity. When I started getting into camping, like serious, like I am now, um, I was so overwhelmed. At that point, I wasn't focused on doing it historically. And I was so overwhelmed by, oh, I've got to have this, I got to have this. And I watch a video and, oh, yeah, that's awesome. I got to have that. Where, like, I'll give an example real quick. Um, I don't think I've ever taken a hatchet or tomahawk with me on a camp trip. I might have once. Yeah, I think I did once or twice because I was specifically doing something to use it. But otherwise, all of my camping, I never even use a hatchet or a saw or anything. But man, if you watch these YouTube channels, they'll tell you, oh, you got to have this saw and this hatchet, and then you got to have a backup because one is none and two is whatever. Well, I just carry one knife and just don't lose it. And I mean, okay, I'm not going to get into that, but the point is the simplicity. Um, I can I use fires with wood that I can break, and and you can get some pretty decent branch wood, and branch wood is denser anyway and makes better firewood. Um, and then simplifying the food. Don't the bushcraft videos have no appeal to me where they're showing pictures of all this impressive food that they bring because I just think you're bringing fresh meat and fresh vegetables where I don't know, that just doesn't appeal to me. So if you simplify it and get used to not spoiling yourself and find one or two luxuries to bring along with you, like for me, mine is coffee. Um, that affects and improves life in every aspect, is my opinion. Is simplification.
That's pretty good advice, man. Now, since you brought it up, and since there's my channel's kind of heavily gear focused, historic gear and stuff. You mentioned your knife. What's your favorite knife that you like to use?
Oh darn, I don't have it on me. Um, it's a Sheffield butcher knife. It's a 6-inch blade and a wooden handle, and I like it because, for one, it spans fur trade era up until modern day, and so it's a good knife where I don't have to buy multiple. It's a good steel, and it's a good size where I've butchered horses and uh, a full grown horse with that knife. Cut off the legs, cut off the roast. Um, so it handles everything. It's big enough to be used as an effective weapon if you need it, and and it only cost me 25 bucks. They're $40 now, but super effective, traditional, and does everything you'll need.
Yeah, you can't beat English steel, man. You really can't. It's good stuff. Most of my straight razors are all English steel, and I adore it. All right, what's your favorite piece of equipment? And it can't be a knife.
Can it be a gun?
Ooh, yeah, sure. Could be a gun. What's your favorite gun?
I mean, I'm just a gun lover, so I mean that's my favorite anytime. I can't narrow it down, so I'll just show the one that I've got on me. I've shown it before, but I like this one because uh, it's very tiny, so it's very minimal. If you can't tell, I'm into minimal. Uh, it's not super high powered, so it's not really effective for a lot of things. But I can wear it all day, and I don't even know it's on my belt. Where my peacemaker type revolver does get heavy after a few hours. So it's a beautiful gun, and it's lightweight, and so I love it.
Is it a 36?
Oh, sorry, it's a 31 caliber. It's the
Okay.
1849. I forgot to say. I apologize. It's the 1849 Colt pocket revolver. It's the most sold gun. It was his most sold revolver up until he came out with I think the 1873 model.
I've got
Yeah.
a I'm a Remington guy myself. I got an 18 what is that? An 18 is it a 63?
The pocket one.
No, it's the New Army, Civil War guy, so
Oh,
is that at
okay. Well,
63 Remington?
they call it a 63, but it's actually an 1858.
Yes, yes, you're right. So it is the 1858
No, no, no,
Remington
no. I got it
New
backward.
Army.
I'm sorry. They call it an 1858, but it's an 1863 or 62. I apologize.
All right, I'll give it to you. I don't now I don't even know. Maybe I'm just talking out my butt, but
No, no.
but it's I like the Remington.
Yeah, it's a beautiful gun. That's what I used to use at the Rendezvous. Um, I'm bummed because it's
Yeah,
rusted now and I can't use it. It's a sweet revolver.
I bought my revolver at a gun shop, and it had a little tag on it that said parts. And I was like, man, it's 75 bucks. That's pretty sweet. I'll see what I can do with it. Nothing else. So I brought it home and I was tweaking a little bit. The trigger that has like a little notch that the spring catches on, it was, I think, filed off to make it a rapid fire. So I went ahead and I put a little bit bigger notch in there, and it worked wonderfully. I love it.
Oh man.
You can drop the cylinder out a lot easier than the Colts, because of the wedge.
Hmm.
So that's why I
Yeah,
love it so much.
yeah. Those are sweet revolvers. You still have it?
Oh, yes, yes, sir. I love it. 45, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got an 1873 Winchester because as a kid, I always wanted a 73 Winchester rifle. And
Cool.
it's not the correct
Caliber.
caliber though, because I got a 45. Here in Ohio, you got to be careful about what you hunt deer with, big game, because they all have to be pistol cartridges. So I went with the 45.
Nice. Yeah, I want
But
to do the
it's
same.
fun gun.
Yeah, and those 73s, I tell you what, I've been looking at them on Gunbroker, and they might be the most beautiful lever action made.
Yeah, they're nice, man. You can't put a scope on them. I think they make like a special piece that you can do it so that when you cock it, the bullet can expel out. But since it
Oh,
expels out the top instead of the side, you got to get like a special piece for a scope. But I don't know. You guys like you and me, we don't need scopes anyways.
nah.
All right, Richard, before we log off, is there anything else you would like to share with us or anything you'd like to say?
I think I hit on the important stuff. Um, really appreciate what you're doing. I love your channel and how you're preserving history.
Well, I appreciate that, man. I appreciate everything you're doing as well. Folks, you got to get on YouTube. You got to check out Over on the Wild Side. Check out Richard's full catalog of videos. And there's no way you can't learn something from watching this man. He's so knowledgeable. He interacts with his people. He's got 2 Facebook pages. One's his personal one, so if you don't wanna get offended, stay away from that one, but he has another Facebook page that is just he shares all the little updates that he's doing throughout his life. It's funny. That's how I found out about his turkey friend, which I feel bad because I kind of neglected mentioning your turkey friend,
Uh,
but yeah, that's your new dog. All right. So thank you so much, Richard, for joining us today, folks. Make sure to like and subscribe. If you're interested in any links like to Richard's channel, you can check the description below. You can also check the show notes if you are using this on the podcast. Uh, Richard, thank you. I hope you guys have a wonderful week, man, and I'm going to catch you next time.
Sounds good, my friend.
Now, if you are unaware, we are actually starting a monthly newsletter that you can subscribe to. The link is below in the description box on YouTube, or it's in the show notes. So make sure to check that out. Now, there's some serious value that's going to be in this monthly newsletter. You're going to get a bunch of pictures, updated guest lists, so you know exactly who's coming up and you don't want to miss a thing, and a bunch of tips, tricks, and of course, suggestions on how to spend your money wisely. That way, you get the most out of your outdoor experience. But even more so, the suggestions to get outdoors and enjoy the time that we have. And don't forget to check out Richard's channel over on the wild side. That's on YouTube, and he's got a fantastic catalog that you just don't want to miss. We appreciate you guys joining us. We hope you guys have a wonderful week. Give a kiss hug to your loved ones, and we'll see you guys next time. Take care.